things that it's this balancing act of giving people freedom versus constraining things so that stuff behaves and acts properly.
So, to begin, can you introduce yourself, tell us what your role is in the company, and give us the convention pitch for Make Sale?
Convention pitch. Haven't taken it to a convention.
I know.
Not quite. Anyways, I'm making excuses now. I am Ziba Scott. I am the founder and coder and sole proprietor of Popcannibal. And Popcannibal's, for the most part, it's two people who are working on this game. It's myself and Luigi Guadieri, who's the artist, doing all the art. We've contracted some music from Clark Abood and some sound effects from Johnny Dritch.
Cool.
So that's our team.
The team. So Make Sale. Give people the basic premise if they haven't seen it already.
So Make Sale is a game about sailing.
That is surprising.
You find pieces to build a boat. You take the boat you build out on a third-person adventure, sailing it on advanced simulations of water and wind. And while you're on that trip, you find dangers, and you find more pieces to build better boats. So you get to the next island, you build a better boat, so you can get past more dangers and bigger troubles and get to better islands.
On and on from there. That leads in nicely to one of the first things I wanted to kind of pick your brain about, which was this idea that you are unlocking more and more items to build boats, from dinghies to catamarans to big masted sail ships, whatever, as you progress. And I hadn't had an opportunity to talk to a developer that's creating a game like that in our video series yet, and I wanted to kind of find out what challenges that brings up as a developer and how you prepare for that, because as a player, it's really cool to have a big toolbox available and all sorts of different things you can do with all different pieces. But I've got to imagine from the development standpoint, there's only so many different permutations you can test. How do you prepare for the imagination of a huge player base?
Yeah, I mean, there's the blessing and curse of a structure of a game like this is that if you add a new piece in, it's got this huge multiplicative property where it now has relationships with every other piece in the game. So, you know, if you have 100 pieces and you add 101 pieces, now you have, especially because you think the sides you can put things on, you have thousands of new combinations for each one. So it's this huge boon. And I don't know if any developer can be confident at any level that they're going to be able to test every combination of a thing in a game like that. That's part of, because we are still very early in development, I should say.
Right. Yeah.
It's one of the things that is this balancing act of giving people freedom versus constraining things so that stuff behaves and acts properly. And one of the things that places we're at, which I think is a little bold for us, is we've got sort of a freer snapping system for putting things together than a lot of other building games. And so we have more points on which you can connect things, and things can end up at angles. And so maybe we're just asking for the trouble that you're describing it more like that. But I think the most important thing is that the overwhelming majority of things behave, and at least at launch, and we're going to be responsive to players if they're finding this piece always has crazy stuff. But and then there's a certain part of it that people are going to want these really unpredicted behaviors. It's a sort of like people will want to deep dive and be like, if I am able to attach a plank to a propeller and now that becomes like a mega propeller, but then every time that comes around it's going to hit my own mast or my boom and it's make my sail back and forth. Actually, that has the great property of doing something. There's potential for unexpected things, which I'm afraid to tighten things too much to really squash that.
Yeah, that's where I was going to kind of go next. And as a developer, where do you see drawing the line between an inventive use of the mechanics and exploitation? Where it's a non-competitive game, that becomes less of an issue, but it's
right. Exploitation is what I wouldn't want is to have unintended behaviors that take the fun or challenge, or the appropriate level of challenge, away from players. One of the things that I have real mixed feelings about is how a number of games in this genre use Steamworks, for example. I think that's almost sort of a strange exploit where there's this, and we're going to be using Steamworks, they're going to be doing sharing, but I really am trying to look at different ways to structure it. For example, in several games, you jump in, you make a few little things, then you're like, okay, what's on Workshop? And then what is on Workshop? The most glorious, amazing, awesome thing. Let me grab one of those. Okay, I just beat all these levels. There's no real point to that anymore. So like, for me, in some way, having access to these end game things are sort of an unwelcome exploit that I can't help but take advantage of in some way because, well, why? I don't know, it's there. So,
Right.
I don't know. In the same way that we want to protect, have a sane behavior of pieces to protect from exploits, it's all about pacing, making sure we're sitting at this proper engagement where, like, you feel that the time you spent you're getting better at it. This prize you got is worth it, and so that's what's worth guarding. This sense of pacing
Makes total sense. The other thing that I think a lot of people are going to latch onto with Make Sale, and certainly was really accentuated in your videos with your Fig campaign, is the sort of realism you're trying to bring to the game. Even if the art style isn't necessarily realistic, there's a lot of programming work going on behind the scenes to do with all sorts of different physics-based things. So buoyancy, drag, lift, you're really making a realistic sailing simulator. Seems like a monumental task to me. And first question, was it something you knew you wanted to do from the start? Did you know you wanted this level of realism, or is it something that kind of grew over time?
So I would count. So we are working hard on using real physics and simulating a lot of real forces. But the aesthetic of the world is this more brightly colored, sort of romantic, fanciful thing Luigi is so good at. And also, the pieces that we're giving you are a much wilder, more imaginative playset than, I can really respect the idea of a very real sailing simulator, but I wouldn't want to misadvertise this game by leaving out the healthy dose of fantasy that we have. So we're doing all this stuff with buoyancy. The buoyancy is more optimized for a lot of pieces than for exactly. We're not matching, for example, the hull shape. We're doing a lot of estimations with rectangles, which lets us a lot of things, which I think it works pretty well, and I can show you a bit later. But we also have to deal with the fact that we want you to have a wide variety of boats you're making, and we want them to be fun and be useful and be, you want your first boat to work, not to be great, but to work. And in truth, with some of these designs that we're going to let you build, those would just be a terrible thing to actually go out on the sea. Like that's a stupid idea. So we're putting in these real physics, but then we're also trying to stretch things to make it possible for someone without a degree in without 7 degrees to construct a working boat, and several working boats, and to feel like that they're growing some understanding of, okay, this one is slow because this much is dragging in the water. So if I make this lift up higher, then there's going to be less drag. It'll go faster. Yay, that worked. So we want them to have these real physics lessons with the real physics forces, but we have to do some handcrafted balancing of how those physics actually wind up in the game to keep it fun and playable.
Sure. How did you approach putting all these pieces together? Was it something that kind of each piece developed independently and then were brought together, or is it something you kind of worked on unilaterally as the project?
How do you mean pieces?
So like buoyancy, drag, lift. Did you take each of them apart, or did they always kind of mesh together? I guess is what I'm wondering.
I will say some of it, some of it's sitting down, reading Wikipedia pages on various forces and stuff like that, deciding what would be good. And some of it is sort of stumbling into, because we didn't initially set out to necessarily simulate so much. We've actually been at this a while, but as we kept making it, parts would just feel missing, and some parts would be obviously missing. I made we started with only the drag force on the wind, which so you put up a sail, it pushes on the sail, that makes sense. Your boat gets pushed in that direction. But as soon as you start showing that to people, people with any experience sailing were upset that they couldn't sail upwind. Because a real boat, not all boats, but a lot of boats are constructed such that if you get the angles just right, there's a force instead of just drag that is lift on the sail, and that helps you move perpendicular and oftentimes just slightly upwind. It's a maneuver called tacking, where you zigzag back and forth upwind, taking advantage of this of various forces that aren't just the wind. And so when we didn't have that, it felt like something was really missing. And putting that back in has been a really satisfying, bringing closer this experience of having a relationship with the wind on this vehicle you built.
Cool. It's cool to see how that all works together and built. So turning from Make Sail to kind of get a little bit of a picture of you as a developer, what is your story that brought you to independent game development?
I was doing Linux consulting and university IT and things like that for years, and I heard an NPR radio story about a university near me that was going to start doing a master's program in serious games design. And so games' primary purpose is not entertainment.
Right.
That was really interesting to me. So, but I'd missed the application deadline. So I just sent a casual email to one of the professors there, Carrie Heater, and she got back to me right away and said, "We're doing this now. We'll back enroll you in this. You're signing up for this. We'll figure out next semester how to apply those lifelong learning credits to the degree. You're starting now. We're doing this." And she sort of dragged me in, and it was great. And that was sort of the real start of me deciding to focus my professional life around games.
Cool. So what was kind of your background in games as a gamer? What games really informed your tastes? What are some of the games that you've been playing recently?
I think if I were to if there's a period of time that part of me is stuck in, I think it's 1993.
Oh, that's very specific.
I don't know. I still have a copy on my hard drive. So like I wrote my own little DOS launcher for games back in '93, and I still have a copy of that. It's like when I stopped, I'd written my own menu for launching all my Sierra games and my VGA Duke Nukems and stuff like that. And I don't know, that's me, this classic period. One thing that really I think set me off on this path was Space Quest 4. Big fan of a lot of games like that, but that one just sort of opened my eyes in terms of just storytelling and being in a world and just feeling like this was a medium on par with any other medium that I was going to interact with. And that was a lot. And then Mega Man 2, I wouldn't shut up about that one when that came out. I remember making some kid walking to elementary school, and one of my friends just shut up already, just stop. I'm tired of hearing about Mega Man 2.
So to kind of build the community of indie developers, what are some of the other developers out there that you think are doing something really innovative or really cool, or just indie games that are on the horizon you think that people might have missed that they should be paying attention to?
Well, I have to give a shout out to my home team here. I'm part of the Indie Game Collective in Boston, and so that's if I miss a name now, it's bad. That's Zapdot. That's 82 Apps. It's Test Tube Games. That's it right now. They're not going to watch this interview, so so that's you got Eric Asmussen here doing Robot Roller Derby Disco Dodgeball, and he's secretly working on new stuff. So look up for him. He's a sharp guy who I love the stuff he makes. I just started playing. I just got a Vita.
Ooh, cool.
So I've been playing my backlog of things I bought with PS Plus over the years, but didn't have a Vita to play on it. So Ultratron.
I'm sure I've heard of
Yeah.
that.
To be honest, I think I've owned it for a long time. I even had it on the PS4, and the name didn't catch me, and so I just kind of ignored it. It's by Curve, I think, and it's really I don't think it's anything incredibly new, but it's just a really well balanced twin stick arena earn money, level up, do things, but they just, it's like you can take all the same ingredients, but if you've got a really good chef, the meal's just going to turn out better. I don't know, there's something about the way they cooked all the stuff they put in there that really sits right with me.
It's a good analogy. Well, awesome. Well, thank you for giving us a little background into the whole process of Make Sale, and we'll certainly keep an eye on the campaign, which is very close to funding at this point.
Yeah.
So exciting.
But not so close that people shouldn't jump right in right
Right.
now, make it happen.
Make-
Fake.co.
We'll make sure there's a link in the bottom.